All right, so let's dive into this question that's kind of fascinated and frustrated people forever.
Yeah.
Why do men cheat? We've got some pretty interesting sources, I think, to kind of unpack.
Yeah.
We've got a podcast called The Lost Tapes with interviews from 15 men who've been unfaithful and then some accompanying texts that, digs into some pretty powerful historical figures and their, how should I say?
Their indiscretions.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great mix, I think. We can look at the past and then these modern stories and see how things have changed or maybe haven't when it comes to how we view these things, and also just the personal motivations, I guess, behind infidelity.
Exactly. So let's go way back to King David.
Okay.
And our text really highlights, how power and infidelity were so intertwined back then.
Yeah. David and Bathsheba, that's kind of a classic example. And, it had tragic consequences, which are all outlined in the Bible, of course. But it really shows how infidelity was treated as this matter of secrecy and control, especially for those who, held positions of power.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if those in power almost saw it as, I don't know, expected, like a perk,
right,
rather than a problem.
That's a fascinating point, and it's something you see like all the way through to the Roman emperors. You think of someone like Caligula, his lifestyle was extravagant, he had countless affairs, and it seems like they just viewed those societal norms as something for other people, not them.
So infidelity is like a display of power, almost.
Yeah, precisely. And then, we can skip ahead a bit to Henry VIII. 6 wives, a whole split from the Catholic Church. I mean, his desire for a male heir, and then obviously his own desires too. You can't discount that.
Right. It seems like this potent mix of personal motivation, societal pressure, and maybe even like we saw with the Roman emperors, that sense of being above the rules.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really important to think about the historical context, because those norms and expectations around infidelity definitely shaped how people viewed it. But what's really interesting is to compare that to, what we see in these men from the Lost Tapes. I mean, they're not kings. They don't wield that same kind of power, but their stories, I think, are just as compelling.
Yeah. Okay, so let's hear from some of these guys. One that really stood out to me was Evan M. He said he cheated because he felt completely unappreciated at home, like his affair was a way to feel seen again and valued, I guess.
Right. I think his story really highlights something that you see with a lot of these men, that desire for emotional connection. When that's missing from their relationship, they might start looking for it, in the wrong places.
And it's not just Evan either. Brandon S. said something similar, that he no longer felt any emotional connection, any spark with his partner, and he was, I don't know, I guess desperately looking for that.
Yeah. It makes you wonder how much a lack of communication plays a part, right? Because if these men didn't feel like they could express their needs or work on rekindling that spark with their partners, maybe their decisions make a little more sense. I mean, obviously it's still their responsibility, but
yeah,
it's complicated.
Yeah, and then there's the whole impact of societal expectations. Tyler B. talked about feeling this pressure from his friends to cheat like is almost expected. He called it, I think he said, toxic masculinity.
Oh, how?
Yeah, at play, It's a pretty powerful statement, I think.
It is, and it makes you think about how, societal norms, especially about masculinity, can play a part in all this. It's almost like a throwback to the Roman emperors, that idea that infidelity is somehow a mark of, being a man.
Yeah, it's disturbing for sure. Then we have Jamal R., who is really honest about getting caught up in the thrill of the forbidden. That initial excitement was like he was breaking the rules or something.
Right, the allure of the forbidden, that thrill, that newness. But as Jamal himself admitted, those feelings are often, fleeting. They don't last. And they come with their own consequences.
Yeah, absolutely. It strikes me how these personal motivations we're seeing in the modern stories, I don't know, they almost reflect those historical examples in a way.
I think you're onto something there. I mean, obviously they lived in very different times, but there are these fascinating parallels between their experiences. Even King David, right? He had the power, the wealth, and yet he still sought out that connection with Bathsheba. Could it be that he was looking for something that he felt was missing too?
Yeah, it really makes you think about the human side of these historical figures, We usually just read about them in textbooks.
Right.
And if we look at Henry VIII, you see that same mix of personal desire and societal pressure. He really, really wanted a male heir, and that desire was just amplified by, the expectations on him as king.
It's a perfect example, I think, of how how those individual motivations can get so tangled up with societal norms and expectations. Like for Henry, wanting an heir wasn't just personal, it was tied to his duty as a king. And you can see how all that pressure probably definitely fueled his actions.
Yeah. So we've got these historical figures, driven by this combination of power and pressure and their own desires. And then you've got these modern men, right? Grappling with feeling unappreciated or disconnected or even like pressured by their friends. It paints a very complicated picture, doesn't it?
It does, and it really challenges that simple idea that all men cheat. I mean, these stories show us that infidelity isn't about some biological need or something. It comes from individual circumstances and choices.
Yeah, each man had his own story, his own reasons. It really shows you how complex human relationships are, and that there's rarely just one simple answer.
Absolutely. And I think what's encouraging is that as a society, we're becoming more open to actually discussing these issues. We've gone from whispers in royal courts to podcasts like The Lost Tapes, where people are willing to share these experiences openly.
That's a great point. So we've gone from all this secrecy to much more transparency and open communication about relationships and infidelity.
It suggests that we're more willing to confront these issues head on, right, instead of sweeping them under the rug. But it also makes you wonder, where do we go from here? If infidelity is often a symptom of deeper issues, how do we create healthier relationship dynamics in the first place?
It's a big question, but it's one we have to ask. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't think there's any easy answer or one single answer, but these stories really highlight just how important open communication is, both within relationships, but also on a societal level.
So it's not just about couples talking to each other. It's about having these bigger conversations about relationships, about expectations, and just all the pressures that we face.
Exactly. We need to create spaces where men especially feel comfortable talking about their emotions and their vulnerabilities and their needs without fear of being judged.
Because it's pretty clear that bottling things up doesn't really lead to good outcomes.
Right. And it's also important to acknowledge that women have their own experiences and perspectives on infidelity.
That's true. This deep dive has really focused on men's experiences.
Right.
But infidelity impacts everyone involved, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think understanding those different perspectives,
Yeah.
building empathy and communication, that's key to creating those healthier relationships that we were just talking about.
So it's about recognizing that relationships are a two-way street, right? They require effort and understanding from both sides.
And it's about challenging those harmful societal norms that contribute to infidelity, like the pressure on men to suppress their emotions, or the idea that infidelity is somehow a sign of masculinity.
Yeah, we need to just dismantle those harmful ideas.
Yeah.
And encourage a culture where men feel empowered to be honest about their feelings and seek help if they need it.
And where women feel empowered to do the same.
Right.
It's about everyone feeling seen and heard and respected.
I love that. So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive into this very complex topic, what are some key takeaways that you want our listener to walk away with?
I think the biggest one is that infidelity it's complicated. There's no easy answers. It's often a symptom of deeper problems, like either within the relationship or even in society as a whole.
So it's less about, rushing to judge or place blame.
Yeah.
And more about trying to understand the underlying causes.
Exactly.
And then finding solutions, real solutions.
Exactly. And the second takeaway, which kind of builds on that, is just how important communication is. Like open, honest communication. That's essential for a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
It means creating that safe space where both partners feel comfortable, like really comfortable talking about their needs and desires and concerns.
And it sounds like that also means having those bigger conversations about relationships in general.
Yes.
Expectations, and all the pressures that we all face.
Exactly. We need to challenge those outdated norms.
Right.
And create a culture where open communication and emotional vulnerability are actually valued.
So it's almost like tearing down those walls and making space for honest dialogue.
Yeah, exactly.
Real conversations.
And lastly, I want to really emphasize that everyone deserves to be in a relationship that's healthy and fulfilling. And if you're struggling, please don't be afraid to seek help. There are resources out there, whether it's, therapy, counseling, support groups.
It's important to remember you're not alone.
Yeah.
And there are people who can help, walk you through these challenges.
And taking those steps, seeking help, that can be the first step towards creating healthier, happier relationships for everyone.
That's a powerful message. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today, from scandals of kings to those really personal stories from the lost tapes.
Yeah.
We've seen how infidelity is it's almost like this timeless struggle driven by this complex mix of personal desires and societal pressures and just the constantly evolving landscape of human relationships, right?
Yeah. And while we may never have all the answers, I hope that this deep dive has given you a better understanding of the nuances, the motivations, and just the very human stories really behind this age-old question.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up, here's a final thought for you to consider. We've talked about how infidelity is often a symptom of a deeper problem, right? Whether it's within an individual or a relationship or even society as a whole.
Right.
But what if we kind of flip that perspective? What if instead of focusing on just the act of infidelity, we focused on creating healthier foundations for relationships right from the start?
Right.
What would that look like? What role can each of us play in creating a culture of open communication and mutual respect and just emotional fulfillment? It's a big question, but one that I really hope you'll continue to think about long after this deep dive is over.
It's a question worth pondering because ultimately, when we create healthier relationships, everyone benefits, not just individuals, but society as a whole.
And on that note, we'll leave you to dive deeper into your own reflections. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those deep dives going.
Dive into the shadows of human nature with the Lost Tapes podcast, where the truths hidden beneath our daily lives are brought to light. We uncover the layers of complex relationships, hidden emotions, and raw realities, from mental health to life's hardest truths. No topic is off limits, no story too raw. The Lost Tapes podcast is your invitation to understand the unspoken facets of life. Join us and let's explore life's hidden sides, one story at a time. Don't miss out on more hidden truths. Subscribe now to the Lost Tapes podcast. Stay curious. Stay informed. Click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon to never miss an episode.